Right, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Bava Metzia Daf Tzadi, and we're starting on the very bottom line of Pei Testament Beis. We know that there is a law in the Torah called Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disho. We're not allowed to muzzle our animals. It's an insensitivity. Animals should be able to graze as needed. We're going to be discussing today at length this Isser in Chumash, where it applies and where it doesn't apply. Let's get what?
Belongs to, or just animals that are.
I have no idea. It probably includes a lot of animals. Probably. I don't see.
Plowing, so
What?
dogs don't plow, right?
It's for Disha, yeah. Pashut.
Muzzle you.
Yeah. It's Pashut for Disha. Yeah. We're actually going to discuss today the Shaila if you put on a muzzle before, like if I put on the muzzle and you pull them for plowing, who's chayev? So ad kedei kach. So if there's no Disha, then. And we'll also see a case today where an animal, there's no lav of putting on a muzzle because the animal's sick. And therefore, if the eating is bad for him, so then it's not shaykh hishit, it's bad for him. So let's get into some of those halachos. No, I don't believe we've really spoken about.
It's not about the muzzling the cow, if it's helping the grass, it's not helping the grass.
No, that we spoke about, but not in this regard. That was in regards to the ability to learn out where we know an animal's allowed to eat the another person's food from.
Right.
Okay, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis have taught us. Paros hamirachsos betvua. If there are cows that are trampling on tua, now this is intentional trampling, where the food's already been heated in a kiln and kind of partially toasted, and then they step on it and crack the shaft. They crack the little film that's on the outside, and that's in the case of paros hamirachsos betvua or the hadashos b'truma uve meiser. So the first case is regular tvua. The second case is grains that are trumos and meisros. If you are machsim the animal, if you do put on a muzzle, eino over mishum bal tachsom. There's no isser d'oraisa in those particular cases. In the first case, it's because it's the latter type of disha, and in the prior case, even though it's the classical type of disha, but it's for trumos and meisros, which they're not allowed to eat. So there is no isser there. Aval mipnei maras ayin, because there is maras ayin, therefore we dafka feed the animals. Therefore, maybe bul may also hamin v'tolala betraskalin shebefia. But therefore, we do feed these animals because, well, not with chumos and meisros, but we do for some kind of food to feed them, so it doesn't look like we were machsim them. Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer maybe karshinim, we give them a specific type of feed, the tolala, and we hang it around their neck for them to eat. Shak karshinim yapos la min hakol. It's the best food for them to eat. Okay, very good. There's only one problem. Over here in our brisa on the top line, we said behadashos betruma v'meiser, that when it comes to trumos and meisros, we said that there's no isser of lo sachsom shor b'disho. Uraminhi Sadi Amar Aleph, 6 lines down. Paras merachsos betvua, like we saw in the brisa, same din, ein over mishum lo sachsom bal sachsom. However, this is where we're going to see a steer with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said by trumos and meisros that there's no isser of lo sachsom. V'adoshos betruma v'meiser over mishum bal tachsom. So we already have our kasha. It's a stira in the case of dashos betruma v'meiser. Our first brisa said eino over mishum bal tachsom. Our second brisa says over mishum bal tachsom. So which one is it? Now, we can't get to the answer quite yet because we have to finish the brisa. The brisa continues, V'nachri hadash b'paraso shel Yisrael, a non-Jew, and he has taken my animal, and he is being dashed with the animal, eino over mishum bal tachsom. The goy doesn't have an isra bal tachsom, namely I, through the goy, don't have an isra bal tachsom. What about the reverse? V'Yisrael hadash b'paraso shel nachri. If I am a Jew and I'm threshing, I'm doing machsom shor b'disho, but it's with the animal of a goy, then over mishum bal tachsom, even though you're not the owner, which is a fascinating extension of the isser of lo sachsom shor b'disho. So what we see from this brisa is, as mentioned, kasha truma atruma, kasha meiser a-meiser. Because on the top line of the page, we said, V'hadashos betruma v'meiser eino over mishum bal tachsom. In the brisa, we said, V'hadashos betruma v'meiser over mishum bal tachsom. So how do we distinguish where it's allowed and where it's not? And we spoke about truma and meiser, so it's a double stira. So we said, kasha truma, kasha meiser, meiser. The Gemara responds 12 lines down. Bish lama truma lo kasha. When we're talking about truma, no problem. Kan betruma, kan begidule truma. One's talking about truma, that's where there's an isser of chasima. Kan begidule truma, the seeds of truma that were planted and regrew there's no lo sachsom shor b'disho. It's only on the initial truma where it's going to be problematic. Ela meiser, a meiser kasha. But what do we do about meiser? Says the Gemara, v'chitema, that you want to give the same answer by meiser that we gave by truma. V'chitema meiser, a meiser nami lo kasha. Kamba meiser, kamba gedule meiser. We don't really have a principle of gedule meiser. When we have truma and you take the seeds of truma and you plant them, then we have gedule truma, and that has it's not truma, but it's a lower level of truma. However, bishlama gedule truma that we have this idea. Ala gedule meiser chulin ninhu. But when you have gedule meiser, if you take meiser and take the seed of meiser and plant it and it grows, what then grows is not meiser at all. It's not a lower level of meiser. It's straight up chulin. It's straight up regular food that anyone can eat. Ditznan, we have a mishnah. This mishnah can be found in Maseches Trumos, and what does it say? Gidule tevel v'gidule meiser sheni chulin. If you have seeds of meiser and they grow, it's chulin. So therefore, we can't answer the stira of meiser to meiser between these two brisas by talking about gidule meiser. Says the Gemara, okay, I understand. Let's give a better answer. Elulukasha, we're a third of the way down on Tzad Yamad Aleph. Haba Meiser Rishon, Haba Meiser Sheni. Very different. By Meiser Rishon, we have an Isser of Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disho. But by Meiser Sheni, we don't. By Seima Haba Meiser Sheni. Maybe really both brisas. The one that says that Truma and Meiser does not have an Isser of Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disho, and the brisa that says that it does have an Isser. Perhaps they're both talking about Meiser Sheni. V'lo Kasha, Reb Meir v'Har Rabbi Yehuda. What's the machlokas of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? Har Reb Meir do Amar, that Meiser should say Sheni. The Meiser Sheni is Mamon Gavoa, and because it's the Mamon Gavoa, the animals are not allowed to eat the food, and therefore there's no Isser of Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disho. Muzzle them, don't muzzle them, they can't eat the food anyway. And Har Rabbi Yehuda Damar Meiser Sheni Mamon Hadyu. By Mamon Hadyu, they're allowed to eat that food, and therefore to muzzle them would be an Isser. So perhaps that is what explains the price. The Gemara wants to know, Hechidami, what's the case? The Gemara responds, Kigon Sheikdimo B'Shibolin. And says the Gemara that it was removed when the grain was still in the stalk phase. So that's kind of whatever. This is a subtlety within the process of Meiser Sheni. But that's what the Gemara says is the Ukimta. The problem is with Rabbi Yehuda, we know that Meiser Sheni has to be in Yerushalayim. It seems to be that we have no parameters over here. All we know is that Meiser Sheni is Mamon Hedyu. With Rabbi Yehuda, V'Bay Choma. We need it to be within the walls of Yerushalayim. So the Gemara tells us of an interesting insight. Kigon Shadash Lifni Michomas Beis Pagi. But what is Chomas Beis Pagi? The walls of Beis Pagi. Let's take a look at Rashi. 3/4 of the way down, you can see a little mark of the Gilyon Ashas, the Bramaschal Beis Pagi. Hakev Chitzon Shal Yerushalayim. There's a wall that's on the outside of Yerushalayim. It was an additional wall, and says the Gemara, and Karui Beis Pagi. And basically, the point is that it's another wall, and we were going to broaden the areas in which Meiser Sheni could be eaten from a halachic perspective. That's what the Gemara says. That's what Beis Pagi is. That answers up Rabbi Yehuda. That when we talk about Meiser Sheni, it wasn't in the deeper, the center part of Yerushalayim. If you could imagine a couple of concentric rings, we were going to expand it to the Chomas Beis Pagi. That's what Rabbi Yehuda was talking about. Ibai Seima. Another possible answer between the stira of brisas, the Gemara says halfway down, Lo Kasha Kamba Meiser Vadai Kamba Meiser Dmai. Perhaps there's a difference between Meiser Vadai. There we'll say there's an Isra of Lo Sachsom Shor B'Disho, and Kan B'Meiser Vadai, where we would say the opposite. The Gemara says, well, that's clever. But if you say that hashta da'asis lahachi, why don't we give the same answer by truma? If you want to say that by meiser we have meiser vadai and meiser dmai, then say truma nami lo kasha kam trumas vadai kam trumas dmai. Yet for those of us who've been through Shas, we've never seen this principle of trumas dmai. We've seen meiser dmai. That's what the Gemara says here. Bishlama meiser dmai ika. At least by Meiser, we have a principle of Dmaya, Safek Mu'usar, Safek Ena Mu'usar. That's possible. El Trumas Dmai, Mi'ika. We don't have such a thing about Tanya after all. Avhu Bita Les Havidui. This is talking about a time in history when, as Rashi points out, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, we learned about this in Maseches Sota, that he was Mevatel the Vidui and Gazar al Dmai. Why? Nobody ever skipped Truma Gedola. Everybody always did this. So therefore, there was never Dmai of Truma. Yes, by Meiser, but not by Truma. So therefore, you can't use the answer of Khan. We're talking about Truma, which is regular, Truma Vadai, and the other one's Truma Dmai. Lokasha, what's another possible answer to our Brisa? Khan B'Trumas Meiser Vadai, Khan B'Trumas Meiser Dmai. We are talking about Trumas Meiser and not just regular Truma. Let's get into some shilas, 2/3 of the way down, a little bit more. Bomi Nemer of Sheshes. Let's say, okay, I know the Isser of Los Achsom Shor B'Disha. My animal's about to plow and I don't want to put a muzzle on him. There's only one problem. The animal, every time he eats, he has stomach problems, he has bowel movements. That's what Rashi says. He has some type of diarrhea. It's a bad situation. It's a bad matzav. So every time the animal eats, he has to go to the bathroom. That's not good. That's not good for the animal. So what's the din? Do we say mishum demalu lahu that the reason why we have an isser of lo sachsom shur b'disho is because it's good for the animal? But v'ha in our case, because he's masrezes, he has these stomach issues, lo ma'alolei. It's not good for the animal, and therefore the isser of lo sachsom shur b'disho doesn't apply. Odilma dechazu mitzvah. Maybe the isser for lo sachsom shur b'disho is that there's a tsar for the animal to see food and not be able to eat it, and even though it's bad for him. Okay, but the Chumash says we're obligated to not Muslim. So what's the answer? Amar lehu Rav Sheshes Tani too. We have an answer to this question already. Let's review the question. If muzzling the animal prevents the animal from stomach issues, is that allowed? Can I muzzle an animal for his own good? Is that allowed? The Gemara says Tani Tuha, 15 lines or so from the bottom. Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer, maybe Karshinim Metolala. Why in the Brisa at the top of the page did Reb Shimon ben Yochai say that we should feed an animal karshinim because that's the best food for him? Karshinim yafos la minakol. That's the best food. What do we see from here? That what do we feed an animal? That which is good for him. Therefore, shmamina mishum dema'ali lahu. We only require the not muzzling an animal when the food's good for him. But over here, where the food is bad for him, we are allowed to muzzle him. Shmamina, that the iser of lo sachsom shor b'disho is not categorical. It doesn't mean that it always applies. There are exceptions to the rule. Lo sachsom shor b'disho. It doesn't say this in Chumash, but this kind of reminds me of the principle of batla time, of batla gzeira, even though it's not a din d'Rabbanan, it's a din d'oraisa. It says in Chumash lo sachsom shor b'disho, and the Gemara teaches that if it's bad for the animal because he has diarrhea, he has a stomach problem, so then you're allowed to be machsam the animal. You're allowed to put a muzzle on. Very unique, very, very, very mechudash to have such an idea where the Dorish time of the Kra. Exactly right. We made up a reason, Pashut. The Chachamim came up with what they thought was an application of the Isser of Lo Sachsom Shor B'disho. They touched that the Isser of Lo Sachsom Shor B'disho is about that which is good for the animal to eat. Mehechatesi. I had a great child that just came up today, Taka. The family said to me yesterday, I know you're doing a bris for us on, what day is it today? Tuesday. They said Monday. I know you're doing a bris Tuesday morning. We don't want you to do any metzitza whatsoever. Not metzitza b'peh and not metzitza b'kli. Nothing. So here, by the din d'Rabbanan, the mitzvah d'Rabbanan, I should say, takana d'Rabbanan, by metzitza b'peh, not so pashut what it is in the first place. The Gemara says mipnei hasakana, that the reason we have to do metzitza is mipnei hasakana. I wasn't about to get into a whole lumdus with them about the Gemara and the Rishonim, and I told them, without quoting Piskei Halacha, I said, it's really recommended. I said, it's a zero risk proposition. I do it in a sterile form, tube is sterile, it's filtered, he gets none of me, I get none of him, we get to fulfill the rabbinic requirements around certain. We don't like the tzura. I'm like, I hear you don't like the tzura. So Rabbi first gave me a psakla around this, that when it's either a non-kosher bris for a fraya, if it's a frum Jew, that's different. But if it's a fraya yid, they're on the fringe, and the only way the kid's gonna have a kosher a bris is if you do metzitza in a unique way. And some of the Rishonim define metzitza as being motek dam in kol makam achituch. You take a gauze pad right after the bris, you put a lot of pressure on the makam achituch. The gauze pad draws some blood from the cut. It's a cut. There's going to be blood. So your yod say you check the box. So I'm not comfortable using it. I've used the heter like maybe 3-4 times in a couple thousand. It's very rare in a couple thousand brises. So there already could be a shtickle dorish time of the Gemara. The Gemara says there's a sakana. Maybe now there's no sakana because we do by goyish circumcisions. There's no metzitza. It's not bahasal. So that's all by dinei d'Rabbanan. Exactly. But the model that they're using seems to be by a dinei d'Rabbanan. They're using a din d'Rabbanan model. So it was like you said, David. It's really not a sugya of but the time of but like Zera, but more that they're being Dorish time. But the model is similar. Legabe Yom Kippur.
For anything, I think it comes up in a lot of places.
It does.
Saying the animal that's eating something that's not benefiting it, it's just going to harm it. It's not really eating. You're not supposed to
Correct.
But it's sort of-
But when you put on the muzzle, Rabbi Yaakov, when you put on that muzzle, like how do you not trigger the Isser? So the Gemara it comes up with its own Amoreic svara. It's not
I
state
think
in
it's a
Chumash.
decorative thing.
Yeah, right. I am being machalik. I hear what you're saying, but I just it sounds very mechudash to me. This sounds like a raya for being Dorish Tana Dekra, which I don't think we hold of Ladina, but that is what it seems like over here. Very good. That's what the Gemara says. Next shaila, Iboilahu. This is fascinating. Maushi Yomar Adam Lenachri. Can a yid say to a guy, Chasom Parasi v'doshba? Can a yid say to a guy, hey, I want you to take my animal. You're my worker. You're my non-Jewish worker. Please take my animals and make them plow my field. However, you're a guy. Please put on a chasima. What does this sound like? Amir la'akum. So the Gemara calls it out. Mi amrinan ki amrinan amir la'akum shvus. When we say there's an iser derabanan of asking a guy to do something for us, hanimidu linyan Shabbos to iser skila. That's only when we're dealing with an iser skila. However, abal chasima de iser lav lo. This havamina has massive implications. Okay, I'm not allowed to do a transaction that makes hanaf from basar b'chalab, but my non-Jewish employee sure is. So when in my stock portfolio, I want to make bank off of Burger King and off of McDonald's, and they have their IPO, I want to make money. I'm a yid. Pashut, I'm not allowed to do that. But because the Isser is only an Isser Lav, maybe I can have my guy do the work for me because it's only an Isser Lav. And we say that perhaps that Amir al-Nachri is a shvus only applies by things that have a chiv skila and not by an Isser Lav. Massive implications in halacha if this were to be true. Endless applications. Any Isser Lav that you can think of would become mutter to do derech goy. That would be the implications of this havamina. Aval chasima de Isser Lav lo odil maloshna. Would we say that it doesn't matter? The Gemara responds with a couple of different answers. Toshma, 5-6 lines from the bottom. Nachri hadash beparaso shel Yisrael, a non-Jew who does threshing with the cow of a Jew, eino over mishum bal tachsom. He doesn't violate the Isser de Oraisa bal tachsom. So says the Gemara, me'aber hu de lo avar ha isura ika. It's not an Isser de Oraisa, but l'chor it's an Isser de Rabbanon. What does that mean? He's a guy. What does that mean? He has an Isser de Rabbanon. It means that the Jew has an Isser Derabanan to make it happen. It says the Gemara, "Bedinu di Yisur nami leka." Really, there's no Isser at all. But I did the Tana Seifa di Yisrael Adash beParosa Shel Nachri over Tana Reisha Eino over. So this seems to imply that by a guy it's mamish mutter. Again, the implications are wild over here. I didn't see this in the poskim. I'm just saying that that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it'd be wild implications. Let's try answer number 2. Tashma Tishalchu Le Le'avua de Shmuel. The question was brought to the father of Shmuel Halein Torah. These shvarim, top of Tzadi Amud Beis, the Ganvin Armoin, the Arameans, I always mix this up between Aramaics and Arameans, Aramites, whatever, the Aramai, that they steal animals, ganchin yason mahu, ganchin yason, Rashi says, sarsin osam, ve'achar kach machzirin lebailim. Oh, so what they do is they steal the animals and they castrate the animals because when they're more focused, they plow better. And when they have all of the Yetzer Hara of Tashmish Amita, which is removed by the castration process, they plow better. Rashi says that it's being done by Avas, Bailav Yisrael, Gon Vo'anach Reshu Makiro, Misar Sokdeshe Yinafal Charisha. As you have a non-Jewish neighbor, it's kind of like the Shabbos guy who's excited to do malacha because he loves you. The Jews are the chosen people. So here you have your neighbor who's going to be misares your bull without asking you because it's better for you. So that's a problem. Yidden are not allowed to be misares an animal. You're not allowed to stop an animal from doing that. Big shilas and poskim. What about a dog? You're allowed to take your dog spaying and neutering. These are, okay, whatever the din is. So shalach lu ha'aramis avidbu. Was the yid controlling this process? He asked the guy to do it. If that's true, if there's going to be a ha'aram, I'm going to make them sell the animal, say the chachamim. That's not allowed. You can't be ma'arim like that. Amar Papa b'nei ma'arova sabri lakir of chidka. This is so interesting. The Gemara says, no, really, we hold like Rav Chidka. The Amar b'nei Noach mitzuvin al hasirus. There are Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach, but we have to tack on a couple of extras. One of them is that a goy is not allowed to be misares. A goy is not allowed to neuter, to spay and neuter an animal, to neutralize them, that they cannot have children anymore. This is the famed Gemara in Avodah Zarah, that Hamoshid Yayin Lenachri is an Isser Deoraisa Lifnei Iver Lo Sitein Mechshel. You're not allowed to do that. Fascinating. Sorry, that's not correct. Hamoshit Aver Minachai Lenachri. It's Hamoshit Yayin Lenazir. That's what the Gemara says. Hamoshit Aver Minachai, because Aleph Bez Gimel Dal He Vav is the seven mitzvos b'nei Noach. You have Aver Minachai, you have Birkas Hashem, Gezel, Giloy Arayos, Din, Hereg, and Avodah Zarah. The Vav is Ve Avodah Zarah. A little cheap on the acronym. It was good until the Vav. But Aleph Bez Gimel Dal He Vav. So here we have the Aleph. It's Aver Minachai. You're not allowed. So that's the same thing over here by Sirus. So now there's maybe Shmona mitzvos b'nei Noach. Therefore, maybe that's the case. And Sava Rava thought Lememar Yimkuru the Shchita, that perhaps this animal can never be used for plowing again, and we should sell it for Shchita. No, it's enough that you have to sell the animal, which was what we said is davnun at the end of the second line. Fine. Pshita says the Gemara beno gadol ki acher dami, that if I want to sell an animal, I'm allowed to sell it to my son who's bar chayuva, no problem. He's a bar mitzvah boy. What about beno katan mai? I have a 5-year-old boy. Am I allowed to sell him my animal after the goy was misaresid, but now I have an iser derabanan because it's a ha'arama and I have to sell it? Can I sell it to my katan child? Rav Achi Asar v'Rav Ashi Shar Machlukas. Meremar and Marzutra v'Amri Lahan hu treich hasidi. Either Meremar and Marzutra or two other pious individuals. Machlefei adade. They both had a cow. They had two different bulls, not cows, bulls. So that 123 Main Street and 125 Main Street. So my goyish neighbor on 127 Main Street came in. He did away. He castrated my animal. The neighbor did the same thing. So we just traded animals because there's a harama issue. So okay, so the harama is that we shouldn't have had the goyish neighbor do the castration. However, I'm allowed to utilize my animal once I trade it. So you and I trade animals. My animal was castrated, so was yours. Great, let's swap. Good to go. Next question. What does it mean to put on a muzzle? We've seen dogs with muzzles. It's the conical shape that comes out, like that thing that they wear so that their head can't hit the ground. So boy Rami Bar Chama. What about Hoshiv La Kotes Bepia? What if we stick a thorn in its mouth and it's just uncomfortable and therefore it can't eat? Do we say that that's considered a chasima, yes or no? Hoshiv La, if you do that, chasima ma'al yase. We don't need it to be a certain brand, a certain shape. Anything that you're going to do that's going to stop an animal from eating is going to be problematic. Anything. So let's go through the list. Says the Gemara, what if it's already in its mouth and I just don't take it out? Is my lack of taking out, I didn't put it there, you got a splinter. Is my lack of taking out the coats and isser of losachsam shorbadisho, or here bitzla arimi bachutz, I place an animal right outside the gate to terrify my cow, and therefore my cow is not eating. Is that considered to be losachsam shorbadisho? Here bitzla chasima mal yasef. You place a lion, for sure that's considered a chasima. Similar to the thorn question, if I didn't put the lion there, but I found the lion there, and I'm like, oh, didn't even have to do anything, and now my animal's not eating my food, givaldik, yes or no? Do I violate lo sachsham shorbadisho? Ha'amid bina mibachutz ma'u. What if I place the calf of the cow that I have working, and the cow is distracted by its own calf being outside? Maybe it wants to nurse its young. So is that considered to be lo sachsam shorbadisho haisat tzemei? It's so parched that it can't even eat. Is that lo sachsam shorbadisho mahu? Paras la katvila al gabe disha mahu. What if I take an animal hide and I cover over a patch of that which is threshed? Is that the Isra of Lo Sachsam Shorbadisho? I didn't do anything on the animal, but I put something covering parts of the ground. So it says the Gemara, all of these are good questions. We're a third of the way down. We're going to wrap up to the top of Tzadi Aleph, Amud Aleph, 8 lines down. We'll be stopping there. So let's continue. Let's at least answer one of these, says the Gemara. Just threw 10 questions out, 10 possibilities. Let's see. Titania. So I'm allowed to starve my animal so that that's allowed. I'm also allowed to open up a bale of hay before the disha, so that I get to modulate what my animal eats by either underfeeding or overfeeding prior to the threshing. No problem. So what do we see from there? That l'chora seems similar to the Katav of putting out the hides. I get to control what the animal eats with an external factor. I'm not putting on a muzzle. feeding, not feeding, or covering with a hide. Says the Gemara, that's not correct. Shiny hasam. It's different where you're restricting an animal from eating or giving an animal a lot more to eat because they're hasam de ka'achla. At least there's eating happening. But when you put hide over the grain, then no eating is happening at all. So that's therefore not comparable. Another possible answer is that it's only on the front end. Okay, that's another answer. The next question of the Gemara is 2/3 of the way down. Says the Gemara, what if I was machsim my animal outside of the field? Lo sachsom shiur bedisho. That's the pasuk that we're dealing with. Fine. I won't do it when it's about to plow. I'm going to do it 2 hours before while it's still in the stables. I go over to Betsy the cow or Bill the bull, whatever it is, and I put on a muzzle. But it's not at the time of being machsim shiur ledisho. Is that the isser lo sachsom shiur bedisho? Says the Gemara, let's see. Shiur bedisho marachmana b'hala bedisho. The only time we have an isser of lo sachsom shiur bedisho is when there's disha, is when they're threshing. But I didn't put it on when there's threshing. B'hala bedisho. Odilma. Lo sidosh bechasima marachmana. Just no. An animal can't be found wearing a muzzle while it's threshing. Even if you put on the thing a day before, an hour before, I don't care, it doesn't matter. So how do we view putting on the muzzle well prior to the disha? Amarle mi beis avicha atalamad. Who was talking? Rabbi Yonasan asked from Rabbi Simai. Rabbi Simai responded to Rabbi Yonasan, you should learn from your own house. Good historical knowledge. Rashi points out, mi beis avich, he was Kohen haya. Rabbi Yonasan, who asked this kasha, was a Kohen, and he brings a beautiful raya. Yain v'sheichar al tesh, you cannot drink wine or beer when you're doing your avoda. Atov vanecha iticha bevoachem. When you come into the Beis HaMikdash, you're not allowed to drink. Bevoachem hu de'aser. When you show up that way, it's aser. Hamishto me'ayel shari. But you're allowed to get slammed an hour before you go do the avoda? Absolutely not. Pashat, that shouldn't be true. You have to have your wits to you. Being a Kohen, we learned the Maseches Yuma. Oh my gosh, what a detailed job. Every step, where they go, we had a machlokas, how they walk through the curtains. Everything is an avoda. There's no way you can do this drunk. It's not possible. I was waiting for the comment.
I was letting it go and you kept saying it.
I know. I was kind of egging you on a little bit. But you've been sober, so we're good, man. We're good. I love it.
2 days.
2 more days. We extended the month of May until October. You have some time. Another couple hundred days. So says the Gemara as follows. So how do we view this shaila? That's ridiculous. Of course you can't show up into the mikdash like that. It has to be that when you show up, you can't be drunk. Pashat, you can't be drunk. So here to achanami b'shas disha lo tehechasima. I don't care when you put the muzzle on. When the animal shows up to plow, it cannot have a muzzle on. I don't care if you put it on an hour before. That's still the isser lo sachsom shiur bedisha. Tana Rabbanan nachashayla. If I put on the muzzle before we start, or if I put 2 animals under one yoke to plow and the animals are kiloim, so there you did it early. It's an isser, it's usser, but you don't get malkos. Eladash umanig bilvad. Only the one who is pulling the animal to thresh. So let's say that I am the one who put on the muzzle. I am the one who put the cow and the horse into the same yoke. That's usser. All of that is usser, but there's no malkos for me. Why is there no malkos for me? Because the threshing hasn't happened yet. And you, let's say Tex then takes the reins. Thanks, Phil, for setting everything up. He takes the animals by the reins and he drags them through and they start threshing. Oh, so that's on Tex. That's what it says. Eladashu maning bilvad. Fascinatingly, big machlokas in regards to whether or not you can be machzim verbally. Let's say I have a well-trained animal and I tell my animal, don't eat. Is that considered lo tzachsom shiur bedisha? Verbal. So says the Gemara as follows, itmar chasma bekol v'inhiga bekol. Let's say that I was machzim the animal because he listens to my voice. And when I say don't eat, we've seen dogs like this that are well-trained. Sit, don't eat, eat. Animals that are very, very well-trained. So what about chasma b'kol v'inhiga b'kol? What about if I only use my voice? This is a machlokas amoraim. Rabbi Yochanan amar chai, Reish Lakish amar pater. Why? Rabbi Yochanan amar chai, akimas piv havim avia maisa. Oh my gosh. This is called a maisa. When your lips move, it's called a maisa. The Gemara equates the movement of my lips to stop an animal from eating to wrapping a muzzle around the animal's head. Same thing. They're both a maisa. Big chiddush. And Reish Lakish says, Pater kala lo have a maisa. Sound is not a maisa. Interesting wording, by the way, that kala lo have a maisa. Okay. Anyways, Esvei Rav Yochanan the Reish Lakish, as we turn to the top of Tzadi Aleph Amid Aleph, in regards to the world of Tmura, if a person does a Tmura with words, Lo Sha'adam Rishoyla. What? I didn't see that.
You are correct.
Yeah. It also doesn't really argue Rav Yochanan. It's discussing the second part of the sugya.
It's not.
Yeah. I thought about the question I just said to you, which is they're really not aligned, but I didn't do any research.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You guys are a whole different level of Gemara. It's so wild.
It's all.
Hey, I'm just reading why I'm trying to hold on for dear life, and you guys are trying to bruise some words that I've never heard of. Different languages. You guys are reading a whole different Gemara than I have in front of
What Masech did you have in front of you? Okay, so says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan. What does Rav Yochanan hold? Rav Yochanan says that Akimas Piv is a Maisa, and therefore you're chayiv on losach some shor bedisho. If you say, "Hey, don't eat," you tell the animal not to eat. Says the Gemara, Reish Lakish, you're in big trouble. We have a big maramakam. Lo she'adam rishai lahamir. A person's not allowed to do a tmura in whatever the case is. We're not going to get into the details. Elashim hamer mumar. If in fact he was hamer, then it is considered a tmura. The sofig is harbaim. What do we see over here? That even bedibur you can be sofig is harbaim. Same should be true by us. If we see that by tmura the lav can be executed verbally, why can't the lav of lo sachsom shor bedisho be executed verbally? Why not? Says the Gemara, Hamani, who must then be the author of this? Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Lav she'ein bo ma'isa lokin alav. Wow, this is already a big machlokas. Machlokas we'll see in a couple of Masechtas in Maseches Sanhedrin. We hold Makos and Sanhedrin. It's in two places. Very good. Yeah, it's a well-known sugya in Makos. It's actually all over Makos. It's in a few places. If you look on the side here, you'll see Sanhedrin, Makos in three places, Shavuos, Zvachim, and Tmura. This is the Shas Sugya. We're going to see this a lot in 2 years, and maybe a little bit less. What's the flow? What's after Bava? Where are we? Bava Basra. After Bava Basra, Sanhedrin. Yeah, and 100. That's 6 months. We'll be in Bava Basra for 6 months. I looked at the first video I made. I had no gray hair come out.
That's a lie.
I will show it to you.
You guys saw, maybe not like this.
This is ridiculous.
And I had a full head of hair.
No, you didn't. That is a lie.
Same.
Yeah, you're both lying. It's a lav sheyesh b'maisa. You guys are both chayav malkums. Anyways, Rabbi Yehuda, what? Okay, fine. I didn't hear what you said. I'm just gonna hope that I didn't want to hear it.
First 38, I'll finish.
Okay, so the Gemara says, Eloham Mani, who must be the author of this brisa? Rabbi Yehuda he the Amar Lav she'ein bo ma'isa lokin alav. Very unique shita, and not how we paskin. We hold that malkos are only executed with. That's a bad word to use. Malkos are only given in a case where there is an action. So this is a machlokas. This would change. Lashon hara, according to Rabbi Yehuda, would be chayav malkos, right? Because it's a lav she'ein bo ma'isa, assuming that you hold that dibur is not a ma'isa like Rabbi Yochanan. Okay. Umimatzis mukmas like Rabbi Yehuda. How can you say that the brisa of Tmura is like Rabbi Yehuda? V'ktani Reisha kol mamirin. The Reisha says that everyone can do Tmura. Echad ha'anashim ve'echad ha'anashim. Ve'avinaman ha'kol la'asuye mai. When it says that kol mamirin, what does it come to teach us? La'asuye yoreshu delok Rabbi Yehuda. It's coming to include a case of a yoresh, which Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold like. The Ik Rabbi Yehuda ha'amar yoresh eno mamir yoresh eno somech. Rabbi Yehuda holds explicitly that it can't be talking about a case of Yerusha. If that's true, then the author of that brisa can't be Rabbi Yehuda. How can you say then that the brisa is like Rabbi Yehuda in regards to the lav she'ein bo ma'isa? The Gemara responds, "Hai tana savar lakavase bechadu palag ala bechad." Our Mishnah, I shouldn't say our Mishnah, the Mishnah from Tmura that we learned at the top of this page. That Mishnah is its own Tana, which only has certain aspects of Rabbi Yehuda, which agrees to the fact that it's Lav Shein Bo Maisa, but doesn't agree to the Yoresh part, and there it kind of bifurcates the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. We'll stop right here at Tana Rabbanon, 8 lines down on Tzadi Aleph from Aleph, and pick up Emir Hashem tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.